From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, it's the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm Vasilios. That is Sean Fazan. Remember to like, subscribe, rate, and review. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you're watching the podcast on YouTube, make sure you hit that little bell notification button. You get notified whenever we upload a new podcast. Happy Monday, Sean. Victory Monday for the Saints.
Victory Monday in the city of New Orleans. Don't really get into that much into the preseason because normally you don't have a Sunday preseason game at noon, and we had that this past week, and we have it all preseason. But felt a little different than most preseason games, especially preseason openers. Either the starters aren't playing much or it just is a lot of typical preseason nonsense, but not the case, especially early on when you're talking about the Saints. But like you said, Sil, be sure to subscribe, rate, review, leave us a comment below on the YouTube channel at Fox 8 Overtime Podcast YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe to that. Also, wherever you get your podcast. So, I don't know. It wasn't a regular season game, but it did feel a little more. We were a little more into it this preseason game than we normally would. Obviously, the starters playing had a lot to do with that. But man, what a good start to the preseason. I
agree. I think it just felt like it had some oomph. I mean, you had Mahomes starting, you had Derek Carr starting. There seemed to be some stakes. Everybody was excited to see the starters out on the field for both teams, not just the Saints. But I thought New Orleans came out in full force to support the team, and it was a great night.
There was a lot of Kansas City fans as well.
They travel well.
Sunday at noon kickoff, like I said, the whole lead up, it just felt like a regular season game, and it really was a good day all around.
I agree. So let's talk about the one thing that stood out most last night, and we talked about. I just mentioned it, the starters in there for the first series of their respective offensive drives. The one that stood out most, though, the Saints' offensive drive.
Yeah, look, this is our Monday rewind day, both in TV and in the podcast world, is because we really get a chance to jump into the game again.
Yep.
Watch it over, because you have the live feel, and you go back and watch it, and you feel a certain way. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's right in the middle. Watching that drive live, I felt really good about it when it happened. Then I went back and watched it on film. I feel even better. I mean, that drive had a little bit of everything. First and foremost, this kind of gets glossed over. The Saints won the toss and received. They took the ball after winning the toss. They wanted to get the offense out on the field, excuse me, as quickly as possible and get into a flow and into a rhythm of the game. That first drive had everything. Derek Carr in complete command, complete control, complete poise. You understand why, when you see a player like that operating this offense, why so many people have gravitated to him. I mean, it had a little bit of everything. You saw he was accurate with the football. He went through progressions. The offensive line stepped up. There were moments where he had to climb and get out of the pocket and make a throw. There was a third down conversion. Alvin Kamara looked swift. That screen pass was perfect. They got the blitz call they wanted. Alvin did the fake, kind of the bluff and turn around and catch the screen. And, Carr had to hold it a second to let the defensive lineman clear. And he makes an accurate pass. And Kamara gets out, and it's a big gain. The Michael Thomas factor. We have been watching Michael Thomas, and he's shown some progress, but, when you compare him to 2019 Michael Thomas, you could be somewhat, I don't want to say disappointed, but you could come to the realization that he's not the player he once was after 3 straight years of injuries. But I'm here to tell you, go back and watch the film. The touchdown, it didn't go to him, but it was all him. You did the film study with me today.
I did.
There was 2 guys on Michael Thomas at the snap that allowed Keith Kirkwood to come from the opposite side, run that little over out. They were in a cover 3 zone. I don't want to get too film guy on you, but they're in a cover 3 zone, so the opposite side of the field, right where Keith Kirkwood runs to, the vacated space is open because Michael Thomas runs a slant, and the defender that's supposed to be in that deep third is guarding Michael Thomas. And you even see the defender when they see Kirkwood going through, kind of pointing, get back. Too late. Derek Carr knew where to go with the football. The connection to Juwan Johnson. What did I tell y'all?
You said you said you should be kicking yourself for not talking about Juwan Johnson sooner.
And look, Juwan Johnson had in his first catch, ran that little return route where you go outside the back end. The underneath hole defender went to Michael Thomas, left single coverage on Juwan Johnson. His second catch, was that the third down? I think it was the third down catch. They were in that two-man coverage where there's a double bracket. They bracketed Olave, they bracketed Michael Thomas. Who do you go to? Juwan Johnson. Gets the third down conversion. That drive was fantastic. And what it really did was you have this, it's the next phase in the development. It's the next phase in the process of evaluation. And we've seen these through 14 practices, an offense look a certain way, a quarterback look a certain way, a receiver set look a certain way, an offensive line look a certain way. To have it translate very early in the preseason opener into a game against the defending Super Bowl champs, no less. And look, they were, it's preseason. I don't know where their mind was. But that's exactly what Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael wanted to see. That's why 12 snaps were enough. Pull them out of the game. We needed to see no more of Derek Carr after that. He came in, he got the job done, and the offense got a well-deserved break after that.
And, I mean, just looking at other areas on the team after that drive, like the competitions, I know you and I kind of touched on this in the sports office earlier. The one that stood out to me the most, we talked about it, Allante Taylor versus Paulson Adebo. Allante got beat a couple of times last night. What do you make of that competition?
I get asked often when I go on radio shows or our own shows, if Adebo wins the job and Allante Taylor is not the guy on the outside, can he shift inside? I hope you saw yesterday why I have always been hesitant to say he can play inside, because I don't think he can. I don't think he's there yet. You saw the big deep ball that he gave up. He was playing on the inside, playing kind of an off-man coverage. The guy just beat him deep. There's a couple of plays later where he's supposed to be kind of in that deep third, and he bites on an underneath route, and it's the play Blaine Gabbert just blew the throw because it was horrible, because the guy was wide open in the end zone. You guys could probably remember that if you're just visualizing what happened. And then the actual touchdown, he's on the inside, Roby's on the outside. That's not going to happen in a real game.
No.
If that would ever happen in a real game, those guys are going to be flip-flopped. And, of course, there was a miscommunication. He ended up throwing it to the guy that went to the corner of the end zone, but the guy in the front, neither guy got covered because Roby and Taylor were so confused on the cross. It was kind of a corner route and a slant route, and no one guarded anyone. So he could have thrown it to either guy. So, and then when Allante Taylor went to the outside, what did he do? He knocked the pass up in the air, and Ugo Amade was able to pick the ball off. He's not an inside player. He's not there. And I don't think if he loses this competition, and right now I think Adebo's in the lead, I just think he's going to have to just wait his turn to get on the field in some other kind of way, because I just don't think he can play on the inside.
All right, how about let's move to defensive end for a second. We saw Peyton Turner with a pretty sweet quarterback hit last night. Mm-hmm. That competition between he and Carl Granderson, where do you see that right now?
I still stand. Everything that I've seen in practice, first team defense was fantastic, by the way. I probably didn't give them enough love because they got the fourth down stop, and then they got and I think Granderson was in on that fourth down stop, and then they got the 3-and-out right after. I still think it's Granderson because you see the explosive nature of Peyton Turner. You can see it. That one pass rush, he almost killed that quarterback. He's very big and he's very explosive, but he's just not quite the consistent enough player that Carl Granderson is. And that's crazy to say because Peyton Turner was the first-round pick. Carl Granderson was the undrafted free agent that weighed like 230 when he got here. And all the size and measurables that Peyton Turner had was what the Saints drafted him on. Both guys have had a good camp, but I still maintain that Carl Granderson is in the lead.
All right, and now special teams. Mm-hmm. We saw the end-of-game heroics from Blake Grupe. Is he going to push Will Lutz for this job at all?
No, I don't think it's going to happen. And look, shout out to Blake Grupe. That was a phenomenal tweet. That was a great tweet. He does look a little young, if I'm being honest. There were a couple times I've seen him out there where, you You wouldn't think NFL football player when you saw him. Kudos to him for having the self-awareness to play along with it. But, look, he got an opportunity. He knocked down a 31-yard field goal in his first ever NFL game. No, it was preseason, but that counts. Well, Lutz had a field goal as well. I like the back and forth between both of these guys, but I just don't think at the end of the day, Lutz would have to really tank it in preseason and into the season probably for him to lose that job. Groupie has earned respect. He will probably be on this kicker circuit at some point where he's going to be a guy teams call up when they need a kicker.
Yep.
Because he's got an NFL leg. But right now, I still think it's Will Lutz.
So we talked about starting competitions here. Let's talk about a backup competition, most notably the backup quarterback competition. And we talked so long about how could Jake Haener possibly push Jameis Winston for this number 2 spot. Didn't really seem realistic, and I feel like last night Jameis kind of cemented that role as the QB2.
Yeah, and we've never taken that seriously here. We've always said it was probably going to be one more year of Jameis Winston, and then Jake Haener will probably be in the mix for the quarterback position his second year. Truth be told, Jameis had a good day. He had a good day, a good start. Got the touchdown, led him to a field goal as well. I thought his last couple snaps were a little shaky. I know he got sacked a couple times. A couple of those were on the offensive line. A couple of those were on him. And he had that one crazy throw where he kind of rolled out and kind of threw it up for grabs. That's the stuff that gets Jameis in trouble. But you saw at the beginning of his effort, he was pretty. I think he had first 6 or 7 passes he completed.
Yeah,
a lot of them to A.T. Perry. We'll get to him in a little bit. In Jake Haener's case, Jake's going to be just fine. I went back and rewatched this stuff. He had a typical 4th-round pick rookie quarterback preseason debut. Playing with all the threes, tried to do a little too much at times, little inaccurate at times. The issue, I don't say issue, he had such a, the outlier was not the preseason game for Jake Haener. The outlier has been the first 10 practices. 'Cause I thought the last 3 or 4 he's kind of leveled off. The first 10 practices were the outlier. Because he looks so wise beyond his years. The truth of the matter is, we saw him making all these plays in practice. Probably misled us a little bit into thinking he was a little further along than he actually was. Bad interception. Was a miscommunication with the receiver. Looked like he wanted the back shoulder. Not sure, but it went there with the football, given the coverage they were in. He's going to be just fine. But Jameis Winston is going to be the backup, unless there's some crazy scenario where somehow they get a call about a trade for Jameis Winston, which I'm not even going to speculate about that yet. So I still think Jameis Winston 2, Jake Haener 3.
All right, so we always talk after these games about who helped themselves the most in the preseason, and so I have a feeling I know who your answer is. So why don't you tell me who you believe helped themselves the most with the performance last night?
Well, number one is first and foremost, it's not hard to figure out. The guy who came in with a okay camp, but nothing to be, like, I don't think his roster spot was guaranteed. I still don't know if it's guaranteed because you just never know what these guys are looking at. You never know what numbers at certain positions. But who made a statement was A.T. Perry. The rookie wide receiver was fantastic. He had that deep comeback. He had the deep over for a touchdown where he stretched the ball over the goal. I know he lost it after he stretched over, but he still got the touchdown. He caught a little shallow cross. He caught a short hook. He caught a wide receiver screen. A nice route distribution.
100%.
And, in camp, the ball's gone his way quite a bit, and he's made some nice catches, but he's also had some pretty obvious drops. Little inconsistent. He's a rookie. That's fine. But the moment wasn't too big for him. So I think he's firmly back into the conversation of getting on the roster. I had him on my roster projection. I'm going to keep him on my roster projection. I'm going to have one in the next couple of days. But A.T. Perry helped himself. The other guy offensively was running back Ellis Merriweather, who's been probably because he plays with the third team. You don't always give him the same, and he's a running back. In practice, you don't always pay attention because you can't bring running backs to the ground. He ran hard. He ran hard, had a couple really nice runs called back. I think there were 2. Then he had the big touchdown catch on the final drive that helped put the Saints within 1. So I thought Ellis Merriweather really helped himself with a room that's going to be thin. Still think he's probably headed towards the practice squad, but I think he helped himself. And I think he's earned more reps in practice, these joint practices, and, of course, obviously in the game coming up. And the last player, he's had a good camp, and I'm going to keep him on my roster projection. He had the pick. He had another PBU. I'm going with Ugo Amade. He can play safety. He can play nickel. He's got versatility. And, you know, he was there. He was Johnny on the spot with the tip ball.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Ugo, I gotta get the correct pronunciation on that. But number 0 has had a great camp, and I think he's starting to pop up. And he translated it from practice into a game. So those 3: Perry, Merriweather, Amade. I thought those 3 guys really helped themselves in the preseason opener. Pretty involved and pretty intense preseason opener. There's a little bit of everything. Because there was some highs, there was some lows, there was a comeback, Phillips is another guy. I forgot he was even on the roster because he was a late signing.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the backfield quite a bit, and he had an interception. I don't know what Kansas City was doing throwing that ball, but who cares? And they got the win. So what a great opener just for a storyline standpoint. And it was good to get like I said before, fresh data on the evaluation. And now the coaches can, because it gets difficult covering it as well. You just get tired after practice 13, practice 14. This guy had a good day. This guy had a bad day. I don't want to see it against competition. And this next stretch, as we mentioned, preseason game, joint practices, next preseason game, joint practices, following preseason game. This is a huge stretch for the Saints going forward.
Speaking of moving forward, just final thoughts as we head into week 2 of the preseason. We're going to have a joint practices this week against the LA Chargers. I know you're going to be there. Mm-hmm. We're gonna be doing a little bit of teleconferencing for the next podcast.
Yep.
Just give a quick couple of thoughts before we sign off here.
I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to the trip. Looking forward to the weather. Looking forward to the Chargers are no joke. This is a good team with a great roster, with a great quarterback. This is the team, and they're going to take these joint practices seriously. I don't know if we're going to see a lot of these same guys that started in preseason opener start in the second game, but I think they're going to take these joint practices very seriously. I want to see the offense look smooth again. I want to see Kamara look good. I want to see Derek Carr look good. I want to see how teams react to Michael Thomas again. And I want to see the defense do some things against an elite quarterback. I think they can. I think they will. And I think this is a good time for joint practices. Like the schedule worked out pretty well. The stretch, the good start to the camp, right when it felt like it was dragging, boom, the first preseason game. Now you got joint practices, keep the intensity up. The next preseason game, then more joint practices. I like the way the calendar is shaping up. So I'm looking forward to the trip. I'll be out there Wednesday. It should get some good work in with us, obviously, at Fox 8 and on this podcast, but also the Saints and the Chargers as well.
Excellent stuff, Sean. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next time. Remember to like, subscribe, rate, and review. This has been the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast.